This is a Sports Catastrophe production.
Hey there, Heather Holders. Jeff Goodman welcome you to another Sports Catastrophe Birthday Boy. And the birthday for today, August the 7th, is a current NFLer who's playing for the Philadelphia Eagles and being their quarterback. He helped Alabama get to 2 straight national championship games and actually was benched for Tua Tagovailoa. And then he was a backup in 2018 and then decided to head to Oklahoma to play his final season with them, getting them to the 2020 college football playoff. The Eagles selected him in the second round, and he became the starting in his rookie season, having a breakout season, helping the Eagles get to Super Bowl 57, but in a loss. He's been pretty good with the Eagles, getting them to the playoffs in all 3 of his primary seasons as the starter. His name, Jalen Hurts, who now turns 26. Jalen Hurts was born and raised in Houston, Texas, and his father was the football coach at Channelview High School. As a senior, he looked pretty impressive and all that. Texas A&M wanted to push to get Jalen Hurts, probably making him the best quarterback since Johnny Football, as in Johnny Manziel. Hurts committed to University of Alabama and was recruited by Lane Kiffin, among other things. He actually participated in powerlifting and could squat 500 pounds of weight. So, as a true freshman in his first year with the Tide in 2016, he was trying to be the starting quarterback. Blake Barnett was the starting quarterback, but in the second game, Hurts became the starter, became the first true freshman to start at quarterback since 1984. Hurts played well, 2,700 plus yards with 23 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, and ran for 954 yards himself with 13 touchdowns, breaking Bama's running record set by Stedman Shiley. He put up 36 overall touchdowns, 23 in the air and 13 on the ground. And he looked pretty impressive in all of that. Alabama was 12-0. They beat Florida for the SEC title game. Hurts was featured on the cover page of Sports Illustrated's College Football Playoff magazine, but lost the final 35-31 to Clemson in Tampa. That was the famous game in which Watson threw the touchdown pass to Renfro with 1 second left in the game. In his sophomore season, he helped the Tide win 11 games, losing only to Auburn in the Iron Bowl. The Tide luckily made the college football playoff as the 4 seed. They would face Clemson in the Sugar Bowl semifinal, and they beat Clemson 24-6, getting a bit of revenge for last year, the previous year. They went up against Georgia. They were down 13-0 to Georgia at Georgia, well, in Atlanta, and people thought that Georgia was going to get the advantage. After all, Georgia played that famous Rose Bowl game against Oklahoma, one of the best Rose Bowls of all time. Hurts would be benched for Tua, and Tua helped them win in overtime. Hurts did okay in that sophomore season, 2,081 yards, 17 touchdowns, and 1 interception. So Tua, being the star quarterback and all of that, was named the starter to start 2018. It'll be a rotation and all of that. Hurts actually did play significantly as the backup for Bama 2018, playing in certain situations. In the SEC title game against Georgia, he actually had to come into the game for an injured Tua. Bama was 13-0 and got to the college football playoff. But of course, he was benched again for Tua when he was healthy. Hurt, in a sense, pun intended, he decided to transfer to Oklahoma in his final year of eligibility. He was a graduate transfer, meaning he was eligible to play in 2019 and not have to sit out a year before 2020. Of course, this was before the transfer portal. In his first game as a Sooner on September 1st, 2019, Hurts shattered Oklahoma's single-game yardage record in a debut, putting up 508 yards of total offense against Houston. He helped Oklahoma start 7-0, which was pretty good. Got them to the Big 12 championship and a spot in the football playoff. Unfortunately, LSU in the Peach Bowl just beat the tar out of them, scoring 9 touchdowns. Can you believe it? 63 points against Oklahoma. Hurts was successful, over 3,800 passing yards and 32 touchdowns. He would finish second in Heisman Trophy to Joe Burrow, and, he did quite well in his 4 years. So now the question on everyone's lips was where he would go in the 2020 NFL draft. Of course, the draft would be different because it was during COVID. There had to be video conferencing and all that. The quarterbacks drafted above Hurts were Joe Burrow went first overall to Cincy. Tua went fifth to Miami. Figures the guy who stole his Alabama starting job would be ahead of him. Justin Herbert went sixth to the Chargers from Oregon. Jordan Love went 26th from Utah State to Green Bay. That move has kind of been big because Jordan Love has picked up a giant $50 million a year paycheck. He would be the next quarterback after Jordan Love, going 53rd overall by the Eagles. It was kind of weird how not many teams wanted him. Anyway, originally named the third string quarterback for the Eagles behind Carson Wentz and Nate Sudfeld, he made himself known as the backup. Unfortunately, Carson Wentz had some ineffective play, and in Week 13, Hurts relieved him. He threw a touchdown pass to Greg Ward. They still lost. Then he was named starter against the Saints. He did okay, 17 for 30, 167, and a touchdown, and a 24-21 win for the Eagles. And he put up 106 rushing yards, which was pretty good, too. Hurts was not doing so well against Washington. He was benched, losing to Washington. A lot of people said that Doug Peterson, the head coach, was actually attempting to deliberately lose the game. Nevertheless, Peterson was tossed. Jalen Hurts was wearing number 2 in his rookie season. I forgot about that. Then he changed to number 1. And new coach Nick Sirianni made Hurts the starter. In the season opener, he helped the Eagles crush Atlanta 32-6, throwing for 3 touchdowns. Unfortunately, though, he got injured against the Giants, meaning he was out for the next week's game. Hurts then came back after a bye week against Washington to win and helped Philly win a playoff spot. He put up 3,144 passing yards, 16 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. In the wildcard game against Tampa, he did decent 258 passing, but they still lost to the Bucs, who went on to do okay, 31-15. The 2022 season, Hurts became the first Eagles quarterback to lead his team to an 8-0 start and all that. So he did pretty well. In Week 14, when they beat the Giants, they made another playoff berth. Unfortunately, though, he sprained his front shoulder. So he had a few weeks off. But he was 14-1 as a starter, putting up 35 total touchdowns, 22 passing, 13 rushing, 6 interceptions, and over 3,700 passing yards. He helped the Eagles crush the Giants in the division round 38-7, and then they beat the Niners 31-7. So it meant a trip to Super Bowl 57 against the Chiefs. Hurts threw for 304 yards and a touchdown, and actually scored 3 rushing touchdowns himself, which is unusual for a quarterback, much less any player, to score 3 touchdowns himself. While 3 touchdowns and a 2-point convert actually tied the record for most points scored in the Super Bowl with 20. Unfortunately, though, it wasn't all sunshine and lollipops, as Hurts lost a fumble which was returned for a touchdown by Nick Bolton in the second quarter, and almost had a Hail Mary, but the Eagles lost to the Chiefs 38-35. Still, it was a good season. Then he signed a 5-year contract extension for $255 million, or $51 million a year, making him the highest paid player in NFL history. However, it was surpassed 10 days later by Lamar Jackson's contract with the Ravens. Nevertheless, he put up 15 rushing touchdowns in Week 16. Well, when he's got his 15 rushing touchdowns in Week 16 of the 2023 season, it set the record for most rushing yards by a quarterback. Rushing touchdowns in a season by a quarterback. Cam Newton had that record. Anyway, the Eagles did lose the wildcard round to the Bucs 32-9. He did quite well with passing and rushing touchdowns with new records for himself, but career highs in interceptions too. So in his 4 seasons with the Eagles right now, he's 34-17 as a quarterback with 11,764 passing yards, 67 touchdowns, 34 interceptions. So almost a 2-to-1 ratio. And in the postseason, he's 2-3, including that run in 2022. Hurts' older brother, Arion, was the starting quarterback for Texas A&M before becoming a coach at Bama. He is a Baptist, keeping God at the center of everything. Anyway, Hurts actually filed for a trademark for the phrase "Hurts so good" because he wanted to do it in a clothing line, but the application is still under review. So yeah, Jalen Hurts made it hurt so good to be an Eagles fan after all. Anyway, I'm Jeff Diamond. I do.